Hammers. Truly the protagonists of any hardware store-based RPG, guiding the party into clear and present danger with a headstrong stubbornness that can only be described by experts as dangerous and stupid.
Just pick a hammer! I don't know how you convinced me to get more during our hunt for tools to fix our home, but just pick one already!
Andy, those hammers are F tier, D tier at best. I need a triple S plus A star excellent job tier hammer.
I'm not sure you could afford the Fixbreaker 400 with USB charging and Baja Blast dispenser, but that's a hammer I would happily do this another year for.
There's a what that dispenses what?
Oh, you don't look up tier lists for random objects in your free time only to discover that we perpetually settle for the C tier of life only because we deprive ourselves of the S tier things due to expense and availability?
Isn't it for that, and several other reasons, that we agreed that tier lists are useless?
I did agree, but I still allot myself time to look at random internet tier lists, and that time started 30 seconds ago. That's right, I'm donating my tier list time to you. What do you want a tier list?
Tales of Game's main protagonists.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to pick something ridiculous. Alright, who do we have to work with?
So the protagonists we're considering are Lloyd Irving, Emil
Castellane, I think.
Luc von Fabre, Asbel Lant, Jude Mathis, Mila Maxwell, Ludger Will Krusty Krab,
Kresnik.
Velvet
Crow. Velvet Crow.
Yuri Lowell, and Sore.
There really is no safe place to start, so I'll pick the one who's freshest in my mind, Luc von Fabre. Luc, of Tales of the Abyss fame, is an incredibly sheltered character until the story is thrust upon him and an unholy plot to unravel the threads of the world begins to unfold. Luc spends the first half of the game as a petulant, downright negative and derogatory presence on screen. Any scene with him is rather unpleasant, and his constant need for approval from the obviously evil man is a little distracting. A brick would be a more useful party member than early game Luc.
But early game Luc is due for a metamorphosis of sorts. He begins the game as a caterpillar afraid of the world. But when the world begins to change, he retreats inward, creating a cocoon around himself until he finally emerges and goes through that metamorphosis. He doesn't become a butterfly per se, but he becomes aware of how harmful his approval-seeking mindset is to him and his close friends. He sheds his long hair in classic anime Now I've Changed fashion and begins working to repair the bridges his bitch self attempted to burn.
A tier. Luc von Fabre belongs in A tier. He completed a significant arc of character development that ultimately changed how he perceived the world around him, creating a Luc who cares for others, seeks self-improvement, and thinks for himself, which former Luc would never do. A tier for Luc.
Ooh, my turn. I'll be the negative Nelly here and pick Yuri Lowell. Yuri Lowell is a straight-up murderer who impresses himself upon others and refuses to change to fit the situation. He would rather murder the people involved to get his way, and does so several times, than actively empathize with those around him. He is a psychopath who did not deserve the friends he had or to ruin Flynn as much as he did.
Consider this. Flynn began as a straight and narrow soldier. Rules are rules, follow them or be punished. Then he encounters the lone wolf Yuri and begins breaking rules, becoming lax with them, eventually forgiving the great number of absolutely despicable things Yuri and those associated with Yuri do. Flynn would have been a far more compelling character to make the main, but we were stuck with Captain Murder Pants. D tier for Yuri. Get down there, you. Don't even try to murder me with your impressionable abilities, loser.
He does have some fun combos, though.
Does that move him up the tier list?
No, it does not.
Sore. F tier.
No arguments here.
You thought I was the positive tier list guy? No, I just call it like I see it.
Sorry, not sorry. F tier you go, buddy. Uninteresting story, seriously lacking gameplay and battle mechanics, and a completely useless plotline where you fight negativity incarnate. Just dumb from beginning to end. Sorry to F tier. Thank you.
I'll do another. Mila Maxwell. We count her and Jude separately because they both embark on their own, however similar adventures. Mila's was focused on not only fully realizing her Maxwell name, but that she is not above the humans who worship her, but equal to them. She spends the first part of her adventure crippled and paired with this strange grappler from Rize Maxia. Even if he falls for her, he also takes the time to teach her how to be human, how to live among them, talk to them, and be one with them. She loses her purpose, but gains a new one as she improves and becomes stronger.
But where do you put her? What tier does she belong in?
As much as you know I hate grading scales, I have to place her in the B tier. She has a fine story, a fine arc, and she ends up gaining a new perspective by the end of the game. A fine character. B tier is where she belongs.
Then that raises the question, what about Jude Mathis, the grappler and medical student from Rize Maxia who betrays his future to help Mila realize hers? He begins as the cookie-cutter young adult studying medicine, also knowing a bit about kicking ass on the side, but sacrifices it all because a strange woman begins an investigation in his hometown. Their goals seem so different but end up being incredibly similar. Where do we put the man himself, Jude Mathis, on our tier list?
Considering how similar the game is both ways, and how the story isn't too different no matter who you pick, we may have to place Jude squarely next to Mila in the B tier.
Fair enough. A dumb sidebar, should we do one of these for all the final bosses in these games?
That's enough stupid ideas out of you for one day. Do the next tier placement.
Ooh, I want to take a cheap shot.
Go for it.
Ludger Wilkresnik.
Oh, that one is cheap.
Ludger's biggest, most prominent, yet somehow most silent quirk about him is the fact he's a silent protagonist. That doesn't really work in the world of Tales of games. Tales of protagonists are usually full of some sort of life, as well as some sort of quirk, whether it be constantly bringing up that they're a medical student from a specific place, that their father separated from their brother at a young age, or that they're a member of royalty and would rather be a fucking baby about everything. Ludger has, well, none of that or any of that, really.
Ludger ends up being another silent protagonist that never has a say in his life and is usually the tool by which other characters use to have another person agree with whatever they say. They force other characters to come to conclusions on their own, and it reaches a point of oversaturation that you wish this character with interchangeable weapons and the ability to transform would actually speak. But he never does, and the game he's a part of ends up being awful.
Can we put him in E tier instead of F, if only because of the interchangeable weapons?
Fine. Ludger Wilkresnik goes in E tier. That includes every alternate timeline version of him. Every alternate timeline version of us agrees, right?
Yeah,
We're
yes.
looking
I'm
good.
in the back.
Can I
Could
go
you
home?
repeat that?
On to the next. Velvet Crow. The best example of not letting your revenge consume you that was ever put to games. Only because that's all she is, all she becomes, and all her decisions are driven by. She does everything in the desperate attempt to get revenge, and she ends up making some heinous mistakes that put her and her entire party in danger. The supporting cast in this game does nothing to console her, and they're all their own levels of revenge-hungry losers. So it's a game about how you shouldn't be consumed because then you'll end up like them.
It had Magilu in it, so the game as a whole wasn't a waste. So, where do we put Miss Angry Face?
I'm thinking E tier. She never really had an arc and never changed. She only ever showed the already ripping seams in her game's story over and over again. E tier for her.
Tales of Grace's F may be one of my favorite Tales of games to date, with one of my favorite supporting character casts, but the main protagonist, Asbel Lant, is not. He only sets out to be a tool, a vessel, to be used and abused by others, and that's exactly what he becomes. He never makes a decision on his own, never achieves agency without first being consumed by some dark power, making a rash decision that puts him in incredible danger, or being completely oblivious to Sharia's advances. Asbel is a wholly uninteresting, unmoving, and uncharismatic character that only emphasizes how cool the rest of the cast is. E tier for this walking plank of wood.
We should play that game again someday.
We should. Any arguments about E tier for Asbel?
Nope. Nail on the head. Before our finale character, let's put one of our favorite games under a microscope, and by proxy, that game's protagonist, Lloyd Irving of Tales of Symphonia. Our very first Tales of game and our very first Tales of protagonist.
I like him. He has a complete arc. He changes from beginning to end, and his views of the world and what he can teach the future is altered by his adventure and the company he keeps. He knows when to cut the fat from his life, and he knows what he needs to do in favor of the greater good. His several trials and tribulations only make him a stronger character in the end. Certainly a driving force for good, and one that you end up rooting for. A tier.
You spend all that time praising him and only give him an A?
Does he have USB chargers and dispense Baja Blast?
He's a video game character.
Didn't think so. A tier for Lloyd Irving. Of course, that means we come to our finale, our final protagonist to place on our tier list from games we've actually played. Emil Cassidy
I knew it was cast a lasagna.
from Tales of Symphonia Dawn of the New World, a game that still stands the test of time as one of the worst games we've ever played. Emil is the greatest example of this sequel's need to feel accepted among the canon titles.
Emil is a husk character. one that only acts on the adventure handed to him because some otherworldly power has taken over his body and forces him to. He is a human host we can identify with because we are also human, and it would have been weird to play as a demon. Emil is a quiet, cowardly, boring, uninteresting character that will rely on a rotating cast of reference characters and locations to elevate his status. It doesn't work, Emil is a nothing, and he really only matters when he's overtaken and at the very end of the game.
Emil, like the game he comes from, is the final bit of a run-on sentence that should have ended several hours ago, but somehow still prattles on about how important he is, his storyline is, and how he must protect Marta. It doesn't work. He sucks and his game sucks. F tier is too high. We're adding a secret tier to this list. Triple Z tier. That's right, cartoon snoring tier. Emil goes there.
Andy, I just looked at the internet, yes, the whole internet, and they all agree. Cartoon snoring tier is too high for Emil. However, there is no 7th ring of hell we can reach while alive that will allow us to bring him lower.
As long as they know we tried our hardest to place him at the bottommost tier we could, that's good enough.
What did you think of our tier list of Tales of Protagonists? Do you agree with our list? Are you already formulating well thought out and hate-filled arguments to change our minds? If so, please remember, this is an opinion on the internet and is not intended to be taken as any law of any kind. We are simply expressing our thoughts on these characters. Where do you rank the Tales of Protagonists on your tier list? Let us know in the comments so we can judge you. I mean, agree with you. Okay, thank you for watching.